Hey there, folks of all different classes. I think I might try that in the future if it's more the TTRPG vibe that I'm trying to go with in a lot more situations than I had been before. But this is going to be the very first episode in the supplemental series that I'll be doing solo. Originally, my plan for supplementals was for me to go through the books, the adventures, the items, all the supplements that I was buying or kickstarting, crowdfunding, all that good stuff, and giving you guys my 2 cents, but also letting you know if this particular supplement would work in campaigns that are already running, or if you basically have to start in this new situation. Like, what would you need to tweak to make this new supplement fit into your game world? I have gotten so many supplements for tabletop RPGs. Not even all of them are 5e, some of them are system agnostic, just tons and tons of stuff, and I wanted to share them with the rest of you. So on this very first episode, I want to talk to you folks of all different classes out there about a particular supplement that really kind of sold something home for me that I didn't know I was missing until I finally read it. This is incredibly difficult to hold up and actually don't have a glare to not have a glare on it. Well, the supplement I want to share with you is The Monsters Know What They're Doing by Keith Ammann. This is based originally on a blog that he had written. Now there's books, there's multiple books. This just happens to be the first one, but the idea behind them is all pretty much the same. I think that this particular supplement and all the books therein are very cool for dungeon masters specifically who want a more realistic take on the inhabitants of the world that they're creating, the world that they're running, the world that they're editing. The reason I chose to say inhabitants is that it's not just monsters, even though the name of the blog was The Monsters Know What They're Doing. There's definitely just like regular people, how certain soldiers, how knights would act. Basically, if you wanted to make your creatures feel more fleshed out, to make them react more according to how they would biologically react, or maybe like based on that specific upbringing, that specific training react. If you wanted to get a better handle on that, The Monsters Know What They're Doing is amazing for that. So would this fit into your baseline 5e game? Absolutely. This would fit into your D&D 5e game. Hands down. But I do know, as I've had this discussion multiple times with other DM friends, that because these are based on both taking, if it's a mythological creature or a creature from fantasy, like taking the fantasy elements and the biological components of certain creatures, certain monsters, certain ways of how magic seems to work. If you're running a fantasy game, I personally enjoy like having these components, like knowing what made these creatures so that I know not necessarily made them in the monstrosity sense as opposed to beast if you're using 5e like character traits, like what makes a creature, but what made them, like what created them within world or within our world that led to them being created in a fantasy realm, that kind of things, to sort of flesh out, to inspire what they're going to do, how they're going to act. But I have had discussions with other DMs, like our friend Clubs. He doesn't like these particular supplements. He doesn't like stuff like this that is like, oh, because it's a reptile, it would probably react this way if it were in this particular situation. Oh, because of its natural habitat, I don't necessarily care that it would probably do things like this based on its natural habitat and the way like it's set up biologically. I don't necessarily believe that in my fantasy world it would react this way. So there's kind of two ways to look at it, but you wouldn't have to edit anything at all within your world. If your campaign was already running, you could just slot in these ideas right away. You don't have to change anything or make any kind of tweaks to how creatures have been run to add in anything that this supplement specifically says. Now, as you can see from my copy, I have a lot of notes, and that is because the way that this particular book is set up and the way the blog is set up, you can sort of like search for certain archetypes and then look at creatures within that. So like for me, since I started with Lost Mines of Phandelver, I started my campaign at Lost Mines of Phandelver, we have a lot of goblinoid enemies. So like I'm super excited that this very first book has goblins. They pretty much start off the humanoid section. It's all about goblins. So we got regular goblins, there's hobgoblins, because hobgoblin society is different than regular goblin society. Then there's bugbears and chiefs, and bugbears, while they are still goblinoids, they also have a totally different society than the way that regular bugbear, the way that regular goblins do, or even the way that regular hobgoblins do. And it's not just like, oh, there's just that one stat block. There's also breakdowns, generally speaking, for within species. Like if there's different classes within that species, or if there's different kinds of creatures within that species, Keith Ammann will go into that and how them being different, them having different training, different environments will change the way that they function, the way that they hunt, the way that they interact with outsiders. And like, again, we looked at humanoids before and we looked at goblins because that's mostly what I'm looking at. There's plenty of other stuff in there. There's monstrosities, like we mentioned before. In lore, the difference between a beast and a monstrosity is that a beast is generally a naturally occurring creature, and a monstrosity is something that has been tweaked. Like it wouldn't naturally appear that way. So things like aberrant species, like if something was tweaked by, say, Mind Flayer, like illithid tadpoles or something, stuff from the far realm is generally not that really like naturally occurring. It's been tweaked in some way, so it'd be classified as a monstrosity instead. And spells, if you want to read rules as written in those cases, again, you're the DM, you can do whatever you want in your world. But technically, like speak with animals only works on beasts. It doesn't work on things that are tweaked. Obviously, the most common example is an owlbear is a monstrosity, and supposedly in lore, like some wizard created them way back when. So technically, speak with animals shouldn't work on an owlbear, but most people rule that it can because, again, it's your world. You can do whatever you want. One of the other things that's super cool about stuff like this is if you're looking here in like the undead section, happens to be looking at mummies and stuff like that. The way that the basic stat blocks are set up, usually a creature has a whole bunch of things. You generally want to think of how most combats aren't going to go past the third round. In real world time, when you're sitting there with your party, your combat could be like 4 hours long. But remember that each round in-game time is only 6 seconds. So most of your battles are over within like 20 seconds. It's quick, it's fast. And when you read a stat block, there's a ton of information. But a lot of the things that Keith Ammann goes into, if there is a specific stat block for a certain creature and you want to deal with combat with them, is Keith Ammann will go through like, oh, this creature definitely first turn, this is what they're going to do. Second turn, they would do that. And then sort of like a rinse and repeat type deal, but it does give you like biologically in world terms, this creature should fight this way. So what they should be doing is this. And he even offers insights here and there that are like, they have this in their stat block that they can do it, but based on everything else we know about them, like why would they even use this? There's no real point for them to use it unless like you as the DM need them to. Otherwise, they're going to do this, this, and this. And I find that extremely helpful in really fleshing out the way that creatures interact. And it's not just combat. There's also things in here that are like, oh, this is how this specific race of creatures would treat outsiders. Or like which ones they would be more likely to want to talk to, more likely to want to interact with rather than avoid. There's tons of stuff that's like based on psychology and sociology in the real world that you kind of can put within the context of your TTRPG, within the context of your fantasy world, makes sense, so you can use it. I absolutely adore this series. As you can see, I've read the crap out of this book. There's so many things in here that every once in a while, when I know I'm going to introduce my characters to a new kind of creature or a new race, I know what these creatures would do based on their biological features, based on what the fantasy, what the mythology of that particular creature and how it came to be in D&D would be, or any other system. Like, I have a good grasp on how this creature would react in a realistic sense. And I'm not trying to say that you have to go for like gritty realism or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. I just want you to know that a lot of things that new DMs fear is, how do I make my world feel real? How do I make my world feel lived in? Well, you have to understand the inhabitants of that world. If you can make them seem like they fit, seem like they're real, that helps influence like the rest of how your world is going, how immersed your players can get. I can't recommend this enough for DMs who are willing to look at real world examples that are related to what they're seeing in their fantasy world, that are related to how these creatures would actually react in order to inform their decisions of how to play this creature. And it's not, again, it's not just monsters. There's also like regular creatures. And it doesn't always have to be for combat. It can be for how they interact with others. It can be, it doesn't even have to be enemies. It can also be allies. Like you can use this book and the books in the related series and the blog by Keith Ammann as well to really inform how things should be interacting with one another. Now, again, I'm not saying this supplement is specifically for everyone. Like, I even personally have friends that are DMs that are like, no, there's a fantasy world. Why does biology have anything to do with how that creature is? Why does how this particular, like, culture interacted, which this creature in this world is based on, interacted with people, have anything to do with these creatures? Those are all fair points. Like, this is a very subjective take on this. I think it's great, but other people might not. They might be like, my fantasy world works like this, and I just want it to be only fantasy related. I don't need any real world influences. And that's fine, because that's how TTRPGs are. Like, it's collaborative storytelling, and even the people who came up with the rules, like, they're not going to show up at your house and be like, hey, don't do that. Stop that. No, bad. They're not doing that, so you can do whatever you want. I'm just saying, subjectively, I love the monsters know what they're doing. I will continue to read them. That being said, I do want to stress, if you guys have supplements or other things you want me to look at, or maybe they might even move over to DM Roundtable as well, because it's also part of supplementals, technically, feel free to give me your suggestions, and I will either look at them, they'll get added to a list that maybe DM Roundtable will take a peek at some point. I also have tons and tons and tons of supplements that I will hopefully be able to go through and share my thoughts on with the rest of you. I think that is what I originally wanted supplementals to be. Like, I just want to share. I just want to talk. I want to have a chat. I want to have fun talking about stuff that I'm interested in with the rest of you. With supplemental, we're here now. DM Roundtable is doing swimmingly. Please remember to come in if you want to talk about supplements for tabletop. We're mostly sticking with 5e stuff at the moment, or 1D&D, whatever you want to call it. But at some point, we will be moving on to other systems and system agnostic stuff as well. If you want to hang out for those streams, they are basically every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find me. You can find sometimes DM Bacon. DM Lacara is usually there. DM Shin has only missed one session ever, and Dungeon Mommy has been there for most of the most recent streams. So please come on. Or you can join the Discord. There is a link. You can check out my card, which has a link to all my socials in the description of this video below. Come to the Discord. There's a tabletop schmabletop channel in the Discord for everyone to talk in, because if you've come to DM Roundtable, most of the D&D stuff in Okami Kakure's Discord is hidden because it's just part of my campaign. So I didn't want to bother everyone else with all those other things. So we ended up making a tabletop schmabletop channel for you guys to come in and talk about tabletop. So please come join us, come chat, just talk about D&D. We love it. Like, please come talk about D&D with us. So if you liked what you saw here, leave a like. I'm going to leave a link in the description below to a purchase link for the Monsters Know What They're Doing if you would like to purchase a copy for yourself of this book. I will try to do that with all of the supplements that I use in the future. I'll try to put a purchase link somewhere in the description below so you can pick them up too if you would like. Now, If you would like to support the channel, you can subscribe, you can follow me on the rest of the socials. For those of you with the means to and the desire to, you can support the stream in other ways as well. I have a Patreon. You can become a YouTube member. If you become a YouTube member, you get early access to videos that I release that are heavily edited, because my schedule right now is I try to release one heavily edited video a week and then whatever else fits in. You'll get access to those. Right now, I'm about 4 weeks ahead on those kind of uploads, so you'll get to see them way before everyone else. If you join the Patreon, you basically get the same rewards that you would get at the levels that you do on YouTube, except you don't get early access to YouTube videos. Both Patreon and YouTube members can get access to my upload schedule, so you'll know what I've been uploading. You get access to my D&D homebrew repository, so where I write down all the things that I think would be acceptable in a D&D campaign that I'm running. Again, if you're the DM and you want to use that, that's fine. If you're a player and you want to use anything in there, please talk to your DMs before you just implement random stuff. They got to make sure that it fits in their world. And obviously, a lot of homebrew is wildly unbalanced. So some of the stuff definitely in there requires tweaks, and there's got to be reasons for it within world. But you'll get access to that, and you'll get access to my D&D music overhaul sheet, which I sometimes curate in clerical streams over on Twitch during the week. And that is a list of all the music that I use and reasons when to use it when I'm running my campaign. Granted, you may not have the same music library that I do, but the vast majority of the music is available on YouTube or Spotify, so you can use that to fit in the ambiance of your campaigns yourselves. So you get some rewards that are TTRPG related, you get some rewards that are just me in general related, and it helps me, it helps the channel, it helps DM Roundtable keep going. It's nice. But again, I'm not forcing any of you out there to do that. If you don't want to donate or you can't donate, that's perfectly fine. You can still like, subscribe, and follow on all the relevant channels. And with that, I'm heading out. Bye for now. Oh, and sneak peek of what the next supplementals episode will be.